Are you broke enough yet? Sure, that electricity bill caught you by surprise, and that interest rate increase will clobber your mortgage payment, but to His Majesty's government, you still look pretty flush. So that nice Mr. Sunak's ministry has just indicated his support for $1 trillion climate reparations package. Oh, look at that. For the purposes of comparison, $1 trillion is roughly twice what Rishi Rich burned through in COVID furloughs. So the good news is, if we didn't actually have that original $500,000, committing an equally mythical trillion should be a breeze. If that word reparations rings a vague bell, kind of familiar, well, it's been a while, but 103 years ago, after the Great War, at the Versailles Conference, Britain and its allies imposed brutal, crippling reparations upon Germany. A century later, we're so advanced and enlightened that we now impose brutal, crippling reparations upon ourselves. That's progress. If you also have a dim and distant recollection of the brutal, crippling reparations leading to the rise of Hitler and thus the Second World War, don't worry, these new reparations aren't going to cause another world war. If they do, we won't be in it, because the British Army has taken the precaution of giving all its ammunition to Ukraine. So that's the good news from the COP27 climate Beano in Sharm el Shakedown. Oh, I'm sorry, the down in shakedown is apparently silent. My Arabic's a little rusty. Meanwhile, back in the real world, do you remember just a year or two back when you used to go out on your front step every Thursday and clap for the NHS like a good performing seal? Have you seen the NHS lately? You're probably wondering if we protected the NHS so well that it's retired to the Bahamas. Well, no, it's still out there, apparently. Some county somewhere or other, maybe Rockall, is that where it is? Headline from the Telegraph. Patients wait 2.5 days for an ambulance as NHS crisis deepens. 2.5 days, you don't say. As you can see from the subhead, officialdom has begun blaming the excess deaths, 1,000 a week through the spring and summer, on the inability of sick persons to get an ambulance. Headline from the Daily Express, quote, Dad died during 11-hour ambulance wait as 999 call unanswered for 10 minutes. The Daily Mail says at least 64 Londoners have died waiting for an ambulance. That's bad. But the reason you're reading it in the papers is because it's marginally less embarrassing to officialdom than suggesting it might be something to do with the mumble, Pfizer, mumble, AstraZeneca. I don't want to say that out loud. Don't need another Ofcom complaint before Thursday. Long ambulance waits prompt demands from all points on the spectrum to make sure the NHS is, quote, funded properly, as opposed to blaming it on the vaccines, which would and should prompt calls for criminal prosecution and long jail sentences. By the way, as that Express headline makes plain, the 11-hour wait for the ambulance does not include your initial desperate plea to 999. From the Telegraph again. Some patients were left waiting as long as 52 minutes for an answer to a 999 call, the figures show. This delay occurred in the northeast, with waits of up to 20 minutes in Yorkshire. The reason we have emergency 3-digit numbers, as you'll know if you know your history of the telephonic numbering system, the reason they have 3-digit emergency numbers is because seconds count. So you haven't got time to dial 01713592476845678937762. The 3-digit number is supposed to be answered immediately. That's why it's 3 digits. And then the ambulance reaches you within minutes. 7 minutes is the NHS target, though that's longer than many services would take unless you live on an outlying Shetland island. So when you're on hold for 52 minutes, that's a clue that you're not really in a first world country, are you? In fact, you're not even in a functioning third world country. In England alone, over 7 million people, that's 13% of the population of England and about the combined population of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So if the waiting list of the NHS was one of the home nations, it would be the second biggest one. 13% of people on the NHS waiting list. The United Kingdom is turning into a huge waiting list with an ever so teensy-weensy little sovereign state attached. Why does anyone at COP27 take Rishi Rich and his vast bloated UK delegation seriously? Are you going to take lessons on sea levels in the Maldives in the 22nd century from a guy who can't get an ambulance to you on the same business day and can't pick up a telephone within an hour? Rishi Rich is not technically responsible for sea levels in the Maldives or Tuvalu. The British Prime Minister was responsible for the Maldives until 1965 when they became independent, and for Tuvalu until 1978 when our Pacific friends did likewise. And we certainly wish both our Commonwealth cousins nothing but the best. But rising sea levels have nothing on the huge chasm opening up between our ruling class and the citizens they purport to govern. I am surprised the masses aren't revolting and taking to the streets to demand the overthrow of a decadent, uncaring government too busy dancing under the glitter ball at the COP27 inaugural banquet with comely young lovelies from Extinction Rebellion while envying Rishi doing the opening lambada with Greta Thunberg. But perhaps the revolting masses are worried that if they take to the streets, they might slip on a discarded COVID mask and be lying there for a day and a half waiting for an ambulance. The priority given to any public policy now is more or less in inverse proportion to the government's responsibility for it. However, the cost of striking attitudes can get pretty expensive. Here is a telling finding buried in the small print of a new Ipsos poll. Here's the salient fact. Do you support economic sanctions against Russia, even if they lead to higher energy bills for you? In March, 73% of respondents did. By October, that had fallen to 41%. That's the difference between being able to afford your virtue signalling and not. It's all fun on the games on the beach at Sharm el-Sheikh, but wait till your climate reparations check comes due.